In Cape Town, South Africa, the CCTV does not show a struggle. It doesn't show violence. It shows something far more unsettling. Just one day after his wife was murdered on their honeymoon, her husband walks calmly through the lobby of their luxury hotel, carrying a white envelope. He hands it to their taxi driver. Within days, the same taxi driver would claim that the man in this footage, the grieving husband, had paid him to arrange his wife's murder. So was this a shocking act of betrayal, or one of the most controversial wrongful accusations in modern true crime? This is the case of Anni Dewani. Anni Hindocha, 28, born in Sweden to Ugandan Indian parents Vinod and Nilam. Her family were originally from Uganda, but like thousands of others of Asian descent, they were forced to flee in the early 1970s, when dictator Idi Amin gave them 90 days to leave the country. They settled in Sweden, where her father built a successful business and gave his family stability, comfort, and opportunity. Anni was intelligent, warm, magnetic. Her father admitted he spoiled her. Her cousins said she was the glue of the family, charismatic, funny, and the emotional centre of them all. After university, she moved to Stockholm and landed a marketing job at Ericsson, one of Sweden's biggest and most prestigious tech companies. Life was on track. She dreamed of love, marriage, a family of her own, and she would find all of that, or so she thought. During one of her London trips, she met 30-year-old Anni Dewani, a well-educated, wealthy British businessman from Bristol, a millionaire by 30, working in his family's luxury care home business. He was polished, articulate, financially secure. Some saw him as flashy and image-conscious. Others described him as charming, generous, and deeply caring. Their first meeting was arranged by family, the classic coffee shop introduction. Annie wasn't convinced, but after their second date, something changed. She told her family, there's something about him, something different. They began a long-distance relationship, Stockholm to London, weekend flights, expensive dinners, long emotional calls late into the night. But it wasn't smooth. They were both strong-willed, both intense. At one point, she ended it, but they reconciled, and this time, she was all in. She left her job and moved to Luton to be closer to him. She believed this was the real beginning. Their families met. The Dewanis, wealthy, respected, welcomed her with warmth. Annie later told her father that Strian believed in no sex before marriage, something Vinod admired. Tradition, commitment, restraint. It reassured him. Soon after, wedding plans began. By October 2010, under the glowing lights of Mumbai, they married in a lavish 3-day celebration, attended by hundreds. Family said it was like a fairy tale. But one bridesmaid later said something felt off, that Annie looked distant, disconnected, almost like her mind was somewhere else. No one could quite explain it. 3 weeks later, they boarded a plane for their honeymoon. Destination, Cape Town, South Africa. A surprise completely planned by Strian. He booked them into the Cape Grace Hotel, one of the most exclusive, luxurious hotels in the country. This was meant to be the beginning of their life together. Instead, it would be the end. Friday, November the 12th. At Cape Town Airport, instead of using the hotel's luxury chauffeur service, Strian flagged down a local taxi shuttle, a Volkswagen minivan, driven by Zola Tongo. The 20-minute journey took them past glittering waterfront views and city lights until they reached the stunning Cape Grace Hotel. Before getting out, Strian leaned into the driver's window. He asked Tongo to come back tomorrow night. Dinner plans, city tour, a private guide. This small conversation would become very important later. The next day, the couple relaxed at the hotel bar. Cocktails, laughter, taking photos. Everything looked perfect. That evening, Tongo picked them up again. Strian had booked dinner at 96 Winnery Road, one of the most acclaimed restaurants in the region. But on the way, he and Annie changed their minds. They wanted something simpler. Tongo said he knew just the place. He turned off the main highway and dropped them at the Surfside restaurant in Strand, overlooking the ocean. They stayed for less than an hour. At 10:30 p.m, Tongo picked them up. And this is where everything begins to change. According to Strian, Annie insisted on seeing the real South Africa, even the dangerous parts, even the townships. So they drove into Guguletu, a high crime area where locals say you do not leave your house after dark. Between 2005 and 2010, over 700 people were murdered there. That's one murder every 2.5 days. A South African officer later said, "We wouldn't even drive there in a marked police car." 10:45 p.m, Tongo stops at a quiet intersection. Silence. Then, chaos. 2 armed men run toward the vehicle. They bang on the windows. They point guns. The doors fly open. Carjacking. They kick Tongo out. They get behind the wheel. They drive off with Annie and Strian in the back. Screaming. Panic. Darkness. The attackers suddenly stop the car. They shove only Strian out onto the roadside. He's alive, unharmed. Only Annie remains inside. Why? Strian stumbled through the dark streets of Guguletu, knocking on doors, dazed, panicked, telling strangers, "My wife has been taken." Police arrived quickly. They found him shaken, but strangely unharmed. No injuries, no blood, his clothing immaculate, his expensive watch still on his wrist. Nothing was taken from him, except his phone. Officers drove him back through the township, retracing the alleged route. They quickly located taxi driver Zola Tongo, who had also reported the hijacking. Together, Strian, Tongo and the police returned to the Cape Grace Hotel. The hotel manager later said something that would stick in the minds of the detectives. Why would a honeymoon couple staying at one of the most glamorous hotels in South Africa choose to go sightseeing in the dead of night in one of the most dangerous townships in the country? Something felt off. Back in the UK, at around 3:30 a.m, Annie's father receives a call from Anni Dewani, Strian's brother in Bristol. They've been hijacked. Annie has been kidnapped. Vinod didn't panic. He believed this was a ransom situation. Money could fix this. Until his phone rang again. This time, it was Strian, sobbing. "I'm so sorry. I couldn't protect her." Vinod booked the first flight to Cape Town. At 8 a.m. the next morning, a grey Vauxhall minivan was discovered abandoned in Khayelitsha, just miles from Guguletu. Inside, on the back seat, lay the body of Anni Dewani. She had been shot once, at point-blank range, through the neck. She bled to death. No sexual assault, no prolonged struggle. Her expensive watch still on her wrist, her designer clothing untouched. She wasn't robbed, but she was dead. On his way to South Africa, Vinod received the call. She's gone. He said he sat on the plane for 11 hours, silent, staring at nothing. When he arrived, he met Strian at the Cape Grace Hotel. Everyone was numb. Police were already questioning everything. One detective said, "Tongo knew that area well. He would have known the danger, and he would have known who the hijackers were. Why take honeymoon tourists directly into Guguletu at night? It makes no sense." And another question, why did hijackers kill just the wife, but leave the husband and the driver completely unharmed? They let both men walk free. Neither man had any valuables taken. Annie, the only person attacked, was also the only person left behind. Something wasn't adding up. Still, the case moved fast. Authorities threw major resources at it. Media pressure, public outrage, international interest. Fingerprints in the taxi led them to Golu Mangeni, a local man with a criminal record. He was arrested in his home, where police found a phone hidden under his mattress. He claimed the phone belonged to Zolo Tongo. Mangeni confessed immediately. He named a second man, 26-year-old Zwamadola Kwabe. Kwabe was arrested 2 days later. By this time, Strien had already flown back to the UK. During questioning, Kwabe introduced a third name, Monde Malombo, a hotel receptionist. Then came the bombshell. Zola Tongo, the taxi driver, made a deal. Hidden under a white sheet, he was escorted into Wimberg Magistrates Court. He had agreed to testify. His claim was explosive. This was not a random hijacking. This was not a robbery gone wrong. This was a contract killing. Planned, paid for, organised. And the mastermind? Annie's husband, Strien Dewani. Tongo claimed Strien approached him at the airport before Annie even set foot in Cape Town. Police checked CCTV, and there it was, Strien speaking privately with Tongo for nearly 10 minutes inside the taxi. Annie nowhere in sight. According to Tongo, Strien offered 15,000 rand, less than £1,000, to arrange the murder of his wife. He said he wasn't the killer, but he knew the men who could do it. Tongo claimed he later met hotel receptionist Monde Malombo. Monde contacted Kwabe and Menengi. The plan was then set in motion. Police checked phone records. Monde was heard on recorded calls saying, "It must happen today." Tongo claimed he met Strien just before noon on the day of the murder to exchange money, converting British pounds into South African rand. Strien allegedly said he wanted it done that night. Later, outside the Surfside restaurant, Tongo said Strien asked, "Is everything ready?" Tongo said yes, and as they drove into Guguletu, Strien and Tongo exchanged several text messages. Police later confirmed, yes, messages were exchanged. Yes, there were multiple calls. Strien and Tongo communicated that night, but Strien's phone was never recovered. So what those messages actually said may never be known. It became a media storm. Vinod and Nilam were flown into meetings, heartbroken, confused. Did they want the man who drove their daughter to her death to walk free years early? It didn't feel right, but it might mean answers. And so, through tears, they agreed. They said, "We don't care who gets punished. We just want to know what happened to our daughter." From that moment, the story only got stranger. Strien Dewani's family denied the claims. They said the accusations were insulting, absurd, impossible. His legal team, some of the most expensive lawyers in South Africa, said, "It makes no sense. You're suggesting the millionaire arranged a hit with the first taxi driver he met at the airport." They said there was no physical evidence, no money trail, no messages, no proof. They called it a media-fueled fantasy. But based on Tongo's testimony, all four men now pointed directly at Strien Dewani. Zola Tongo, sentenced to 18 years. Zwamadola Kwabe, 25 years. Golu Mengeni, life. And Monde Malombo walked free, full immunity in exchange for testifying against Strien. Monde said, "Mr. Dewani is lying. He knows everything, from the beginning to the end."
It is difficult to imagine the absolute terror and horror that she must have endured when she stared down the barrel of the gun. Although from a relatively poor background, did not commit this offense due to poverty or his dire socioeconomic circumstances. This crime was perpetrated out of pure greed.
The full picture will only emerge when Strien comes down to Cape Town.
Strien Dewani was soon arrested in Bristol, suspected of orchestrating his wife's murder. South African authorities immediately filed to extradite him, but despite multiple confessions pointing to him, there was still no clear motive. And then the tabloid stepped in. The Sun published a sudden allegation. Anonymous emails claimed Strien was living a secret double life, that he was gay and had been secretly booking a male escort named Leopold Laser, known professionally as the German Master. Lisa told reporters that Strien had booked him several times, and during one meeting, Strien allegedly confessed that he was trapped in a marriage he didn't want. Strien and his family said it was absurd, offensive, and completely untrue. They said he was deeply in love with Anni and grieving just like any husband would. But detectives had questions. What if Anni had discovered this during the honeymoon? Could that secret have sparked something darker? Even Anni's father, Vinod, who had passionately defended Strien in the beginning, began to feel uneasy. There were too many versions, he later said, too many things that didn't sit right. He wasn't accusing Strien, but he couldn't ignore the inconsistencies. One stark example, Strien initially told police that all of Anni's jewellery, including her engagement ring, had been taken by the hijackers. But later, he phoned an investigator and said, "Check the seam in the backseat of the car." There, still intact, was the $25,000 engagement ring. When asked why he hadn't mentioned it earlier, Strien said he had been confused and in shock. It didn't help that the night before Anni's funeral, Strien hosted a pizza party at the hotel. Vinod called it inappropriate, disrespectful, and deeply painful. Anni's family also recalled that Strien reacted angrily when they began preparing her body for burial, according to tradition. They said he was agitated, rough, and even threw aside letters and flowers the family had placed with her. He later apologised. As the media attention intensified, Strien's mental health began to decline sharply. Diagnosed with severe depression and post-traumatic stress disorder, he was eventually admitted to the Priory Hospital in Bristol under medical supervision. A grieving husband or a man under pressure? And the biggest question of all, was this behaviour the breakdown of an innocent man or the unravelling of a guilty one? Strien later confirmed he was bisexual, but firmly denied ever wanting to harm Anni. Her family said it made no difference, only that he should have been honest. In 2014, after years of legal battles, Anni Dewani was finally extradited to South Africa.
This is the moment that Anni Dewani, the millionaire businessman based in Bristol, began his involuntary acquaintance with South African justice, 4 years after being accused of plotting the murder of his newlywed 28-year-old wife Anni on their honeymoon in Cape Town. Anni pleaded not guilty to the 5 charges against him, but he also surprised the court. Through his lawyer, he went on to say that he was bisexual, that he'd had encounters with male prostitutes, and he had abnormally low hormone levels, which meant it was unlikely that he could ever have children. The prosecution is expected to argue that the murder was linked to a sham marriage meant to hide Mr. Dewani's true sexual identity. In his defence statement, Anni Dewani admitted their relationship was turbulent. An email from Anni to Anni Dewani, written before their wedding, was read out in court.
If you really think being with me is not going to make you happy, then this is not right for you. I really hope that is not what you are saying, but I don't want to feel like I have forced you into something.
During the trial, a list of digital emissions were revealed. Phone logs showed that during the honeymoon, and even hours after Anni's body was found, Strien was searching gay dating sites and explicit content. The prosecution argued that this wasn't about his sexuality, but about his alleged desperation to escape a marriage he no longer wanted. In court, footage was played of Strien and Anni holding hands, kissing, smiling, laughing. He broke down in tears watching it. His lawyer argued, "Is this how a man behaves if he plotted her murder?" But prosecutors pushed back. Affection doesn't cancel deception. He still hid key information, including calls with Zola Tongo that night. Judge Jeanette Traverso ultimately threw out all the evidence regarding his sexuality, calling it inadmissible and prejudicial. Witnesses took the stand. Friends revealed Anni's private messages, sent just days before her death. Fighting a lot with Strien. Wish I had never got engaged. Crying has become my new hobby. He's a good guy, but I don't feel happy with him at all. Was she just homesick or scared? The prosecution's case depended almost entirely on one thing, Tongo's testimony, and that white envelope. CCTV shows Strien in the Cape Grace hotel lobby, less than 24 hours after Anni died. He was smiling, holding a white envelope. He meets Zola Tongo. They move off camera. The envelope changes hands. Strian returns without it. Was it payment for murder? Or just a generous tip? In another CCTV clip, Strian is seen talking to a hotel cleaner. According to Tongo, Strian was asking the cleaner to give them privacy, then supposedly whispered, "Has the job been done?" But under cross-examination, Tongo's story began to collapse. He changed dates, changed times, changed who said what and when. Phone records didn't match, timelines didn't align. He contradicted himself over and over again. The judge said, "This is a web of lies, with no reliable or credible evidence." And before Anni Dewani ever took the stand, the case was dismissed. Not guilty, free to go.
A short while ago, Judge Jeanette Traverso ruled in favour of the defence's 174 application for a discharge of the charges against Anni Dewani. After almost 4 years, Mr. Dewani is now a free man. He's been acquitted, essentially, of the 5 charges against him relating to his wife's murder.
Annie's ashes were scattered over Lake Vänern, Sweden, the place she loved the most. Her family say their grief is not just for her life, but for the truth they never got. Some believe it was a tragic carjacking gone wrong. Others think it was a kidnapping for ransom. And some still whisper that it was a carefully planned murder and the mastermind walked away. Today, more than a decade later, we have CCTV, we have confessions, we have theories, but we don't have the truth. Because the CCTV can show us conversations, it can show us envelopes, it can show us secrets, but it can never show us intention.